We see things like electric vehicles, EVs coming along, and they're really shaking things up, aren't they? Changing what we drive, but also, well, entire industries. But what if the real story, the deeper revolution, isn't just the shiny new vehicle itself, but actually how companies service these things?
That's exactly right. That's what we want to dig into today. How leading manufacturers are strategically adjusting their whole service approach. It's not just about adding a couple of new EV-related services. It's about transforming the entire portfolio to genuinely support these eco-friendly products.
Right.
And what's fascinating is that this complex change, well, it boosts sustainability, sure, but it also builds competitive advantage and drives some serious profitability, all at the same time.
So if a company, maybe a traditional manufacturer, wants to make that jump, really get behind these green innovations with services, is there a sort of foundational idea, the strategic must-do?
Absolutely. The key concept here is servitization. It's basically a strategic shift. Product companies move away from just, selling a product, to becoming much more focused on delivering services around that product.
Right, servitization.
And this evolution happens along two really crucial lines: scope and sophistication. Scope is about, well, the breadth of services. How many different things do you offer? Moving beyond just the vehicle to a whole support system. Sophistication, on the other hand, that's about the depth. How customized, how integrated, how smart are those services for what a specific customer actually needs?
That makes a lot of sense. Scope and sophistication. But, these eco-friendly products, they have so much potential. Where's the friction for companies that already have established service models for, say, combustion engines? Are those old systems just not up to scratch?
That's precisely the challenge.
Yeah.
Your existing service setups, they've been honed over years, decades sometimes, for traditional products. And honestly, they're often just not equipped to effectively support these newer, eco-friendly innovations. It forces a real rethink, a need for pretty deep strategic changes. Companies kind of have to change their service DNA.
Okay, so to make this concrete, our deep dive looked at trucking,
Right.
a major player in commercial vehicles. What was their situation before EVs really started taking off for them? What were they working with?
Trucking is a great example, really compelling. Before their big EV push, their existing service portfolio for their traditional combustion trucks, the CTs, was already, frankly, a powerhouse. It was generating something like 20–25% of their total revenue, which is substantial.
Oh, yeah.
And this covered all the essential areas you'd expect: parts, financing options, pretty comprehensive fleet management tools, and even advanced connectivity services. So they had this really robust foundation already in place, which set the stage for the transformation they needed to make.
Okay, a quarter of their revenue already from services. That's significant. So starting from that strong base, how did Truck Inc. actually adapt? What were the key moves, the strategic shifts they made to handle this new world, especially with EVs coming in?
We identified 7 key strategic adjustments that really redefined how they approach service. You can basically group them into 2 main categories. First, seriously increasing the sophistication of services specifically for the new EVs. And second, expanding the scope of services, interestingly, even for their existing legacy combustion trucks.
Okay, let's break that down. Increasing sophistication for EVs. What did that mean for just the basic nuts and bolts, like repairs and maintenance? How does that change with an electric truck?
It's a huge shift. Basic services had to move focus away from things like engine overhauls towards the high-value EV components. Think battery diagnostics, real-time battery health monitoring, and crucially, predictive maintenance for those systems. It's all about proactive care to minimize downtime. And they also had to roll out completely new things like mobile charging solutions. That was absolutely critical for tackling range anxiety among fleet operators.
Mobile charging. I bet fleet managers breathed a sigh of relief there. Range anxiety is definitely a big deal, even for commercial trucks.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the high-value components. EVs often come with a higher price tag up front, right? The sticker shock. How did Truck Inc. handle the financial side to make these vehicles work for customers?
Yeah, the financial services piece needed a major rework. They introduced things like enhanced leasing options, which are really important. They also offered guaranteed residual values for the batteries and the vehicles, which helps de-risk the investment for customers. And crucially, they got really smart about integrating government subsidies and tax incentives directly into their financing packages.
Yeah.
This directly tackles that higher initial cost of the EVs. They basically help customers navigate all that complexity to make the numbers work, balancing the higher purchase price against lower running costs.
Makes sense. Smoothing the financial path.
Okay.
So beyond the basics and the money, you often hear the real gains are in the data these days. What about their advanced fleet management and connectivity? How did EVs change that game?
Precisely. That's where a lot of the sophistication really shines. These services now use advanced data analytics, loads of IoT sensors on the trucks, and AI. They're doing real-time monitoring of battery health, figuring out the absolute best charging schedules, optimizing routes specifically for EV range and charging stops. But what's really interesting and quite powerful is that these advancements they developed for EVs, they also improved the predictive maintenance and even the fuel optimization for their existing combustion truck fleets.
Oh, wonder.
So it created this unified, much smarter view across their entire customer base, EV and CT.
So they leveled up their entire fleet's intelligence, not just the EVs. That's a fantastic dual benefit. Now, you mentioned they also expanded scope for the older combustion trucks, the CTs. Did they just try to keep them running, or did they find new ways to make even the legacy fleet a bit greener?
No, they definitely didn't ignore the CTs. They actually expanded the service scope specifically with sustainability in mind for these legacy vehicles. They introduced new lifecycle services, things like product life extension, maybe retrofitting older trucks with more efficient technologies to cut emissions. And they also beefed up their end-of-life support, focusing on responsible recycling and even remanufacturing parts from old trucks. The goal was really to lessen the environmental impact of that existing fleet.
That's smart, reducing the footprint of the old while bringing in the new. Okay, and the elephant in the room for EVs, charging, getting power to these big rigs, was building out charging infrastructure, just a completely new service area they had to create from scratch.
It really was. Charging infrastructure represented a major new service scope expansion, and it's absolutely pivotal for widespread EV adoption in the commercial space. This wasn't something they could just tweak an existing service for. It often meant big strategic moves, like forming joint ventures, partnerships to build out networks of fast chargers suitable for trucks. And these aren't just standalone charging points. They have to be seamlessly integrated into the overall fleet management systems to optimize charging en routes, ensuring trucks stay on the road.
That sounds like a massive undertaking, especially the joint ventures and integration. So across all 7 of these adjustments, some refining existing things, some building totally new capabilities, how did Truck Inc. manage all this change organizationally? Did they have to completely restructure?
That's one of the really impressive parts of the story. For the most part, no, they didn't do a massive overhaul. Most of these quite complex service adjustments were actually handled by agile, temporary, cross-functional teams. These teams were embedded within their existing organizational structure, sort of like targeted strike forces. It was only for the really high complexity, brand new stuff, like standing up that charging infrastructure business, that they needed to create dedicated new organizational units.
Impressive agility.
Okay.
And the bottom line, was all this effort, this transformation, mainly driven by a push for sustainability, or was there a strong financial incentive for trucking too?
Oh, the financial upside is absolutely a core part of this. This isn't just about being green, though that's important. These strategic service adjustments are projected to drive really substantial revenue growth for them. Remember that 20-25% service revenue baseline?
Yeah.
They anticipate that service income could potentially double, maybe climbing to somewhere between 30% and even 50% of their total revenue by 2030. And that growth is directly tied to the expected increase in EV sales. It's a very clear example of how sustainability strategy and strong profitability can absolutely go hand in hand.
From 25% potentially up to 50%, that's huge. A really powerful link between green innovation and financial success through service. So wrapping this up, what should listeners take away from this deep dive into Truck Inc. and the commercial vehicle world? How might this apply elsewhere? Think about how this strategic marriage of product innovation, like EVs, and a really comprehensive service transformation focused on sustainability might reshape other industries. We could be talking about anything from, say, green hydrogen-powered turbines to sophisticated heat pumps for homes. What critical service adjustments might be waiting just over the horizon for your organization as you start embracing the next wave of eco-friendly solutions? And maybe more importantly, how will you adapt your company's own service DNA to unlock the full, sustainable, and profitable potential of those innovations?